And as a result, we have an annual memorial recognition for those who have left our circle this year, in the past year. And by the way, we also have a memorial of all of the fallen heroes of the ecological farming movement over in Chapel, including the most recent that have passed. And we urge you to go visit that. It's on the side of Chapel on the south side, and also there's a place for a memory book to, if you'd like to add some memories to it, to commemorate. And I helped, and Jennifer and I laid it out yesterday. It's actually quite dramatic, all the wonderful people who have passed from our circle. So in order to honor that situation and those folks, we now have this session where we're going to commemorate the lives of those who've fallen from us. And to do that, that is going to be Boo Nygrens. Boo is from Veritable Vegetable, and for a number of years now has worked with me to create this session. So, Boo. And they told me that if you hold it like this, it works better than like this.
Good morning, everybody.
Closer.
Alan York. Alan was the leading consultant for biodynamic viniculture. A fellow grape grower, Phil Couturi, had this to say: Alan was a true horticulturalist at heart. He celebrated balance in life, in wines, and in the earth. Born in Texas, Alan grew up in Louisiana, and he told vivid stories of trips into the swamps and marshes nearby. But he hated school and ran away to California when he was 16, where he eventually met Alan Chadwick, well known for his amazing gardens at UC Santa Cruz. Chadwick relocated to Covelo, California, creating a garden project to demonstrate French-intensive methods and his approach to biodynamic agriculture. And Alan served his apprenticeship there, eventually becoming the head gardener and learning everything he could about horticulture. Possessing a keen wit and intellect, he amassed a huge library. And he was also devoted to the spirit of the earth, practicing his form of karma yoga, serving the earth through practical work. In Detroit, he co-directed the Horticultural Educational and Garden Center at the Waldorf School at Mercy College. In Missouri, he directed the American Farm Institute. But back in California, he spent 21 years establishing an intensive apple farm in Boonville and a large vineyard near Ukiah. I knew him as a fresh raspberry and gooseberry grower, and I was very unhappy with him when he quit growing berries and to focus on spreading the gospel of biodynamic wine grapes. He did extensive work at Benzinger Farm, the family vineyard there, which is the leading biodynamic vineyard in California. Alan was a tireless international consultant for biodynamic wine grapes, traveling to Chile, Argentina, South Africa, Italy, Israel, and France. He served as president for the Biodynamic Association and also edited their quarterly newsletter. He could describe the very difficult concepts of biodynamics with a warmth and clarity that few have achieved. Affectionately known as Yorkie, the sparkle and mischief in Yorkie's eyes was always contagious, as was his incredible warmth and infectious laughter. Alan died in February and is survived by his soulmate and wife, Roseanne, and his son, August. Alan York, gone from us at 62. Barney Burns. Barney was a penultimate seed saver and was also an anthropologist, an archaeologist, climate scientist, ethnohistorian, and advocate for the native arts. Barney was a founder of Native Seed Search, a nonprofit organization dedicated to conservation of traditional crops and seeds in the arid southwestern North America. Barney worked mightily to preserve the crops, the farming methods, the crafts, and traditions of indigenous communities in New Mexico, Arizona, and Northwest Mexico. For a time, Burns and his wife, Mahina Dries, oversaw the Tarahumara project called the Treasure of Sierra Madre, which involved soil conservation, watershed restoration, pure water access and water harvesting, native plant nurseries, and seed redistribution. A person of incredible intelligence and compassion, Barney knew that people could only preserve their farming traditions if they continued to live on their homeland. To that end, he and Mahina started a business to support native crafts and arts that were sold to supplement subsistence farming. Barney was also a professional guide and lecturer and was the interpretive guide on many expeditions. He kept participants spellbound as he discussed the lifeways, history, and archaeology of peoples including the Tarahumara, the Yaqui, Mayo, Mennonites, and Mormons in Sonora, Sinaloa, and Chihuahua, along with accounts of the Apache history of the region. Born in Pasadena, California, one of his numerous degrees was a PhD in dendrochronology, which I had to look up because it's the ring counting and analysis of trees. Speaking about Burns and Dries, the ethnobotanist and writer Gary Nabin, who is here this year at the conference, said about them, "No two people have worked harder to ensure an agriculturally diverse future for our region, and no one could have done it with as much adventurous hilarity and joy as Barney and Mahina have done. Each of them deserves to be regarded as true keepers of the multicultural heritage of the borderlands." Barney Burns, 69 years old. Greg Muck. Born in Anaheim, California, Greg was a leap year baby born on February 29th. He was an ardent amateur beekeeper, a great gardener, a fantastic school teacher of environmental awareness and skills for elementary school kids here in Santa Cruz. He volunteered here at the EcoFarm conference for many years and was a major deadhead. And I'm not quite sure if that's a requirement for being a volunteer, but it might be. Greg attended the University of California, Santa Cruz, where he earned a bachelor's degree in community studies and a master's degree in education. He was an outside-the-box teacher, passionate about teaching gardening to students, and was a gentle and kind man, inspiring fellow teachers and students alike to look at nature, the soil, and plants in a different way. He worked really well with his students, the principal of his school said. He would bake bread, for instance, as part of a math class, teaching kids how to measure and learning numbers as part of experiment to understand numbers all around. And sometimes I would go into the room and it would smell so good. He was a close and good friend to many people here. Greg left his wife Shannon and their 5-year-old daughter Delphina tragically last August. He was a backpacker extraordinaire, and he died while on a solo wilderness trip in Kings Canyon National Park last year, falling into a ravine. He died doing something he truly loved. Greg Muck, 46 years old. Howard Beeman. Howard was an agrarian pioneer, becoming one of the very first certified organic farms in California in the 1970s. Early on, Howard became interested in the work of Rudolf Steiner, who developed the biodynamic systems of farming, education, and medicine. He and his wife, Susan, founded the Waldorf School in Davis, California, and they later converted most of their 320-acre farmland to a wildlife refuge. He helped establish the Sustainable Agriculture Program at the University of California in Davis in 1986, which was no small feat. Known affectionately as Zeke, he was a trusted mentor and supporter of many startup organic farms in Yolo County and the Capay Valley. Many of those farmers are here today and fondly remember Zeke's generously offering encouragement, teaching them how to drive a tractor or build compost piles, and lending them equipment and even farmland. Zeke was also a tireless environmental and political activist. He ran for Congress twice, and he said, quote, "I want to champion our American values of fairness, justice, and community. We need to preserve our natural resources for the benefit of future generations. Our finest soils must be designated for agriculture and wildlife, for perpetuity. We must learn to live within our ecological limits, and we must never lose our capacity to feed ourselves." That totally nails it. That's what we're all about, don't you think? Zeke, thank you. He was 71 years old. Jerry Brunetti, a veterinarian and dairyman in his native Pennsylvania. Jerry was an author, lecturer, and speaker both nationally and internationally on topics that included soil fertility, animal nutrition, and livestock health. He passionately proclaimed to his audiences about the strong link between healthy soil, true nutritious food, profitable farming, and healthy communities. His many lectures, workshops, and presentations were full of his wit and humor in his unique, eloquent oratory. Apparently he was a tremendous orator. I never heard him speak. He was brilliant in his ability to connect soils, animals, humans, and health from the microbes to the universe. Back in 1979, Jerry founded Agridynamics, with a vision of providing a line of holistic animal remedies for livestock health, horses, and pets. And he was active in many community-based organizations devoted to rebuilding local food systems and local democracy. In 1999, he was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and was given 6 months to live or accept aggressive chemotherapy. But he healed himself using holistic modalities. Jerry spoke to many audiences about the relationship of food as medicine or farm as pharmacy. And Jerry could bridge natural and scientific understandings of plant and animal ecosystems, such as digestion in soils, decomposition, digestion in foods, fermentation, and digestion that takes place in the GI tract of humans and animals. One of his colleagues back east sent this poem by W.O. Abbott that Jerry had shared with his community back there. And this is the poem. "For years I never knew if twilight was the end of day or the beginning of night. Suddenly one day I realized it didn't matter at all. This is but a circle, and there can be no beginning and no end. And this is how I came to know that birth and death are one. And it's neither the coming nor the going that is of any consequence. What is of consequence is the beauty that one gathers in this interlude called life." Jerry Brunetti, 63 years old. John Kinsman. John Kinsman was a dairy farmer from Wisconsin and was an unlikely and unassuming giant in the global struggle for justice and food sovereignty. But a giant he was, touching the lives of countless people around the world, farming, protesting, strategizing, and building relationships and solidarity. John bought a farm 60 years ago with his wife, Jean, and converted to organic production after he was hospitalized for chemical poisoning. In the late 1960s, that's a long time ago, he helped run an exchange program between families in Wisconsin and Mississippi. It was started by the Freedom Riders, and it gave children a farm experience for the summer. That was pretty radical, but very simple. He was instrumental in the fight against RBGH, initially drawing attention to the issue by protesting all by himself, alone, in front of the University of Wisconsin-Madison dining hall with a hand-lettered sign. Talk about grassroots. John founded Family Farm Defenders in 1994, and was a proud member of La Via Campesina, the international peasant organization. And he traveled around the world to protests and meetings to work for justice by building relationships and solidarity. A fellow dairy farmer named Joel Greeno said, John would go off to Indonesia or someplace and we'd ask, were there translators? And he'd say, oh, sometimes. And we'd say, sometimes? How did you communicate the rest of the time? And John would just laugh and say, oh, it's easy. Laughter and beer. His last trip as an activist was in March, where he marched with the coalition of Immokalee workers on their 200-mile march for rights, respect, and fair food. As he had done so many times, he told stories and made new friends and laughed through it all. And after the march, John joined the Second Assembly of the Food Sovereignty Alliance, sharing his wisdom and connecting the struggles of small farmers and farm food workers, urban communities of color, fishermen, indigenous peoples, religious leaders, and many others. John inspired literally countless people throughout his life, building the movement of justice through both his work and through his example. John Kinsman lived a great life, 87 years old. Julia Wiley. Julia was more behind the scenes than her farmer husband, Andy Griffin at Margarita Farm in Watsonville, Mariquita Farm, excuse me. But that doesn't make the sadness at her death any less for our community. She organized their CSA, wrote many of their newsletters, and helped organize numerous workshops here at EcoFarm, and was a member of the EcoFarm Conference Planning Committee, and much more. Julia handled the business side of the farm. She was a fixture at the Ferry Plaza Farmers Market in San Francisco, and chefs who worked with her remember her not just for her being a smart and tough businesswoman, but also for being incredibly supportive. There was a tremendous outpouring from the Bay Area restaurant and chef community when the news hit last month that she had died of breast cancer. She and Andy taught me how to be a better person, said Chef Chris Cosentino of Coxcomb and Bocalone, a longtime client who became a friend and spent much time with them at their farm. Julia never made a big deal about being sick. She always was wanting to make sure everybody else was happy, he said. She lived life in a very different, amazing way. She was super positive, and she always brought out the best in everyone. Michelle Polzin of the 20th Century Cafe said that when she opened the cafe, which was her first business, Julia was a huge supporter. The cafe was really slow when we first opened, and Julia was so worried all the time. She would try to solve all my problems. Polzin said that Wiley moved one of the farm's CSA pickups to the cafe to attract new business to the cafe, and she brought in many guests who became regulars. Julia wanted her customers to succeed, and you won't find many people like that in the world. Our hearts go out to Andy and the family because Julia was only 49. Philip Hale. Philip was an early proponent of organic farming and traveled extensively for the inspection of farms, factories, and other organic industries for certification. He was one of the early members of the Ohio Ecological Food and Farming Association. He was also an original member of the International Organic Inspectors Association, the IOIA. He designed their logo and traveled as an organic inspector to many countries such as Japan, Mexico, and Costa Rica. He provided numerous inspector trainings. I took one of them. And he's remembered fondly for his very quirky sense of humor. And don't be fooled by his spectacles or straight-laced looks. He could easily show up at an event in drag or tell a shaggy dog story to a community in Japan that had no idea what he was talking about. And he really marched to his own drum. And he was an enthusiastic dancer, and he cut the rug many times here at EcoFarm. IOIA's Jim Riddle said about him, "I've never known anyone like him, not even close. Irreverent, visionary, artistic, outrageous, inappropriate, determined, thoughtful, tender, loyal, All of those are qualities I know of in Phil Hale. Phil was an excellent fine artist. He received his bachelor's degree in 1975 from Kansas City Art Institute, and he was an active member of the Midwest Paint Group, which collaboratively organized the exhibition of artists throughout the Midwest. He continued to paint throughout his life. He was married 12 years ago to Yamil Munoz and was buried in their home of Costa Rica, San Jose in Costa Rica. Phil was only 60. Roger Blotsky. A native of North Dakota, Roger entered the field of agricultural supplements as a salesperson. But after learning about organic farming and agriculture, Roger founded the Early Harvest Company in 1970 in Aberdeen, South Dakota. And over the next 10 years, when he sold the company, Roger helped establish national guidelines for organic farming techniques. Moving to Arizona, he established BioFlora, an organic crop nutrition business that utilizes an exclusive blend of ionic materials to further human and animal health. With innovative ideas and unconventional ways of doing business, Roger was able to bring sustainable and organic farming to the forefront of the agricultural industry and developed export markets and established many other businesses. Roger continued to work diligently despite his diagnosis of cancer in 2007, and his enthusiasm and zest for life will be greatly missed. He is survived by his wife 54 years, Renee, and he will always be remembered as a trailblazer and a true pioneer in sustainable and organic agriculture. He was 74 years old. Stephen Gaskin. In 1967, Stephen Gaskin's writing class in San Francisco State evolved into an open discussion group known as Monday Night Class, which involved up to 1,500 students. One of the original hippies, Stephen spoke about his experience with psychedelic drugs and paranormal experiences, as well as lecturing on the importance of ecological awareness. Our own amigo attended Monday Night Class back in the day, and he described Stephen as, quote, incredibly charismatic, long-winded, self-indulgent, a doer, and a great motivator. In 1970, Gaskin was part of a caravan of 60 vehicles that crossed the United States to settle near Nashville, Tennessee, forming an intentional community called The Farm. The farm can be credited with being one of the very first significant organic farms, the first to grow organic soybeans on a fairly large scale, a promoter of all things soy, including the first soy ice cream and popularizing tofu and tempeh. Many organic farmers in our community got started there. The farm was also, quote, a platform to launch efforts to improve the lot of poor and indigenous peoples, whales, and the old growth trees. Stephen went to prison in 1974 for marijuana possession, as members of the commune had, against his recommendation, planted several plants on the property, and he owned it. He served 1 year of a 3-year sentence, and following his release, his voting rights were rescinded. He brought a lawsuit challenging the legality of mass retroactive disenfranchisement, and the case went to the Tennessee Supreme Court, and in 1981, they returned the voting rights to more than 250,000 convicts. His partner and wife, Ina May, wrote a popular book titled Spiritual Midwifery, and she helped birth over 2,300 babies on the farm. I think some women came from outside the community to have their babies. Gaskin worked as an international activist, writer, and speaker to the end of his life. The topics ranged from humorous advice on all aspects of communal life and farming to modern communications, the counterculture, spirituality, drug law reform, and social and ecological issues. Stephen Gaskin died on the farm at 79. Terry Poiriez. Terry Poiriez was the founder of Covilli Brand Organics, and he passed away last year after a struggle with cancer. Covilli is one of the oldest and largest Mexican shippers of certified organic produce. Terry started farming in 1972 and began farming organically in the early 1990s. Being a very detailed, oriented Midwesterner with a very strong work ethic, he built Covilli into a successful and reliable, high-quality brand. Tom Lively of Organically Grown Company said this: "When I finally met Terry, I asked him what got him into produce. He told me when he came into it as an accountant. He was hired to straighten out the books for another farmer, and when he showed up, all the receipts were piled in a basket. So he referred to that kind of accounting as a basket case. He said that when he got done doing the guy's taxes, he realized how much money he was making, and he was so disorganized, a light went off in his head. He said, maybe I could do better if I was doing this in an organized way. And that's how he went, from being a bookkeeper to being a farmer. It's all in the details. Terry's organization and high standards are evident in the quality of the produce that Covilli brand produces. Terry retired only a few years ago, transitioning the business to the next generation. He was a mogul of Mexican produce and will be missed. He was 76. Theo Colburn. Dr. Colburn was born in Plainfield, New Jersey. And after spending many years as a pharmacist and a sheep rancher and raising a family, she returned to school and received her PhD at the age of 58. Her contribution to the world was driving scientific and public awareness of endocrine disruptors. These are chemicals that even in the most minute doses can compromise health by interfering with the development and functioning of reproductive, immune, neurological, and metabolic and other bodily systems, especially when encountered in the womb or in early childhood. Her seminal work, Our Stolen Future, co-authored with Diane Dumansky and John Peterson Myers, was published in 1996. The book captivated the public and has been translated into 18 languages. In 2003, she launched TEDx, the Endocrine Disruption Exchange, an international nonprofit organization dedicated to disseminating scientific evidence of endocrine disruption. Theo also used TEDx as a base for calling attention to chemical hazards from hydraulic fracking. She was really up on fracking. An avid bird watcher, Theo credited her research breakthrough while studying water quality in the Great Lakes area to her unconventional scientific background. She said, quote, "There is a reductionism in science, in scientists, in the scientific community. I have never been a reductionist. I am always thinking about the big picture. My thesis committee for my PhD will tell you that. They had a lot of trouble with me." Widely viewed as a successor to Rachel Carson, Theo will be remembered around the globe for her uncompromising commitment to protecting the earth and those who inhabit it. Theo Colburn, 87 years old. And I'd like to close with a fragment of a poem from the Pueblo Blessing Way that's always given me a lot of strength. Hold on to what is good, even if it's a handful of earth. Hold on to what you believe, even if it's a tree that stands by itself. Hold on to what you must do, even if it's a long way from here. Hold on to your life, even if it's easier to let go. And hold on to my hand, even when I've gone away from you. Thank you.
Good job, Boo.
Thank you. It's okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Boo. Well, that's an amazing group of folks that passed this year. Cottony. So with that in mind, actually, now we go to the celebratory part of the day, celebrating those of us who are here. We've now had for close to 20 years this session, no longer than that. Started in La Honda, the Successful Farmers Plenary session, where we feature 3 farms. And every farm I ever, or we ever invite to this, the farm has some version of a struggle with the concept of successful. But what we define as successful is people are doing exemplary acts, committed to unique and their own creation, and they stand out in their community. They're known, and we recognize them as they become apparent to us that they are significant contributors and deserve and to be honored and have the opportunity to speak in front of a large audience such as the plenary session here at EcoFarm. It's a great tradition. It's an opportunity to get to know a little bit behind the folks, what they do and who they are and what they think. So we have 3 farms represented today, very diverse, both their backgrounds, the kinds of things they do, and where they're from. So I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Don Tipping from Seven Seeds Farm in Southern Oregon. Don is most well known as a saver of seeds, a teacher of the seed-saving way, participant in networking and the development of the organic seed industry. He's got a farm that's a permaculture, a living example of practice and in reality creating a farm that does the best and walks the talk of a permaculture community and the ideas. And he is a mentor and involved with the group Rogue Farm Corps, which does teaching and mentorship and apprenticeship for young farmers to get them into the farming community, and an activist in his community. Please welcome Don Tipping. So that's forward, that's back. If you need to point at something, and that is what you're seeing on the screen while you move it forward.
I think I have this.
Oh, you got a level there.
Yeah. All right, well, good morning, relatives, friends. Thank you so much for this opportunity, this blessing, and just hope that I can share in the blessing of this good life and this good experience with you. And feel really humbled and honored to be following those that have joined the community we know as ancestors. And feel really humbled to occupy this place, too, after so many people that have shined a light forward into a direction that so many of us are just going on faith, believing that we're able to create a life-affirming reality that is about the continuance of life. So I was thinking about this opportunity, and I was pondering the Taoist sage Lao Tzu from the Hua Hu Jing, and within which I quote, "The greatest teaching is you're not able to put this into words. Therefore, the greatest teacher has nothing to say. He just devotes himself to living a life full of sincerity." And when I look at these people that have moved on into ancestor, or that we watched a moment ago, I consider that, and it's really humbling that Alan York was up there, and I practiced biodynamics at my farm for 20 years and learned a bit from him. And also Howard Beeman, because my first farm was at the Davis Waldorf School. So all these people that go before, they open doors that they perhaps are not even aware who's going to walk through them and have their lives changed by them and have the opportunity to change the lives of others. So I wanted to start off the images here with, this is my youngest son in one of our gardens. And we don't know what our children will do in the world, but we just have to live our lives with sincerity and what we believe is truly important in the world. And the more I think about this, it's not so much what we say, but what we do. And again, from Lao Tzu, you aren't what you are is what you do. And I think our kids are constantly watching this. So I've been a strong proponent for the idea of bioregions and watersheds and understanding where we live through becoming people of place. And then when we begin to emulate the place, not only are we gaining deeper understanding of where our food, clothing, shelter comes from, but we are inviting in the co-participatory inclusion of all the elemental forces, all of the ancestor beings, all of the plants, animal, fungi, minerals, indigenous people of the landscape. So this is an image of Cascadia, where I live. And this is all the watersheds that flow to the Pacific Ocean. So we're down kind of in the lower portion of that area, and the Siskiyou Mountains is the east-west chain. If you pick up a rock in the Siskiyous, it's older than the Atlantic Ocean, generally. It's very old. So Seven Seeds Farm comes from a geographical reference point. We're on the north slope of a old-growth mountain chain there. So there's a big landslide in the shape of a 7 that usually holds snow until July or August, although we'll see this year. So it gives us a reference point. That's our water that we irrigate with from gravity there. Here's an image of our watershed and, getting to know our place, becoming people of place. Where does the water come from? Is it clean? Is it, who should I be concerned about? And I've really been learning a lot about, we have stewardship over a certain amount of land, but I think it behooves us to become involved through civic and political participation with all the areas that touch our watershed. So we learned this in the area I live about getting involved in logging and mining issues and having a say in the stewardship of our forests and the earth itself. And increasingly getting involved from this perspective, and this is a good perspective of how pollen might view our farm. And as a seed grower and a distributor of seeds, we're concerned with the purity of the seed that we disseminate. So I've been really active with really the fight for seed freedom in terms of being able to maintain the integrity of our pollen sheds and our seed sheds. And thankfully in May, both Jackson County and Josephine County, where I live, we fairly, the majority of voters, we came out and voted that we did not want GMOs to be cultivated in these areas. So we were successful in that. And now the real work starts of, how do we make friends with all the people that were there, maybe planted GMO alfalfa and all that. So we dreamed up a scheme. We have a meeting next week of how to create a organic alfalfa CSA. So rather than just telling these farmers that planted GMO alfalfa, like, till it up, sorry, because they have Monsanto and Syngenta backing them in a lawsuit, so we've got to get kind of creative because we can't beat those guys. So how about if we get enough people to say, I'll buy a ton of alfalfa, I'll buy a ton, we'll pay, what is it going to cost for you to till that up and replant it? And a certain amount of weeds in the alfalfa are going to be good so that we can ensure a GMO-free future for future generations. So I'm excited about that. Here's another image of our farm. I'm lucky to have a neighbor that's an airplane. We have 7 ponds at our place and a whole integrated Keyline water system. Our farm is pretty much mostly about rainwater catchment and gravity flow irrigation, where we don't have to use electricity to move water, and we also do a bit of aquaculture in these ponds. We tend about 12 acres at our home farm with about 5 acres in annuals, about 4 acres in perennial crops, and the balance in pasture. And then we also lease some ground to have isolation fields. So I'm just going to take you on like a little walk of what my life is like there on the farm. And you'll see a lot of things that maybe strike you as a bit different. And I think, that those images of those people that went before us maybe are living testimony to in the immortal words of Frank Zappa, that without deviation from the norm, progress is not possible. So our farm isn't laid out like a normal farm. We kind of have perennials and annuals all mixed together, seed crops and vegetable crops and medicinal herb crops and just subsistence food crops mixed together, along with plant breeding. Whenever you see a bunch of sticks out there like that, that's some plant breeding thing, and don't mess with it. Here's a trial. We're always looking at germplasm and to figure out, like, how can we co-evolve with the climate and our nutrition and our diet and the plants and animals that are where we rely on. So here's, that's about 30 varieties of kale that we're assessing for suitability for our area. And we're not always looking for the best one. a lot of times what we'll do is then we'll let things flower together and become relatives and create what's called a grex. And we create new germplasm and allow for the evolution of these plants with our climate and with ourselves and with our microbiome and our culinary preferences. As an onion seed crop. And then I like creating scenarios like this. If I were to walk up upon it like a child, this isn't a food forest, and just ponder, like, this is how life thrives. It's not in our controlled way. It's in when we let it go wild. And to look at these images and all the different species that we're working with. We work with over 400 different taxa on our farm. In untold amount of varietal diversity within those taxa, those different species. And I think increasingly the way forward is to include the biodiversity, increase the biodiversity that we are consuming in our diet. So, in those purple berries there, that's Aronia melanocarpa. It has 40 times the antioxidants of blueberries. And, I think those kind of things are the proactive healthcare so that we don't wind up in that ancestor slideshow for as long as possible. And I really think that, I want to be of service that way so that we can continue to live long, healthy, productive lives in good health. And that's really important to me. So a lot of times we're trying to experiment with permaculture farming, and it made perfect sense to me, but it's interesting as I go on in life that nobody does this. Nobody tries to implement these ideas, well, not nobody, but very few people, of stacking functions, multifunctional integration of animals and production crops. So, like when we grow calendula, we get the first harvest of flowers for medicinal herbs, and we used to sell hundreds of pounds of dried calendula to Pacific Botanicals and the herb farm. And then we would let it go to seed and harvest it as seed. And then we learned, that's an awesome trap crop for cucumber beetles. So we'll grow it adjacent to a winter squash seed crop, because then the cucumber beetles will go feast on the calendula. And so we're, constantly learning this stuff. And usually we have every year some element of failure. And that's what it's interesting up here to somehow embody success, because pretty much, from my experience, is a commitment to the level of experimentation that's going to ensure a certain percentage of failure in what we do. But through all that, we learn a lot. And so here's an example. This is a no-till, Three Sisters crop of corn, beans, and squash, along with some other things that wound up, because being seed farmers, our compost is full of vegetable seed and herb seed and stuff. So this was seed balls thrown out by students from Evergreen University that we do a permaculture mentoring with. It's a university that models a lot of sustainable education up in Olympia, Washington. So we threw seed balls out into a pasture that had been, I call it golf coursed by sheep. Grazed really heavy, and then it grew into, all these different crops, and we got a harvest out of it. Was it a record-breaking? No. But did we use tractors? No. We're evolving. How would we do this? If we really needed to, how would we do it? And meanwhile, you can see in the tree cages, that's a honey locust or a chestnut tree or, a Japanese walnut, thinking about the future polyculture that will thrive there, really, in my kids' and grandkids' generations. And so that's a lot of it is like tending what's going to work for today while we're also keeping an eye on the future. So our farm, a lot of times we're, have all these things stacked in right next to each other. We raise sheep on a small scale for grazing, and we distribute lamb and sheep skins. But then we also have our source of fertility right on site through the animals that we raise. And again, so here, that's a small Japanese walnut there planted from seed, and we graft a lot of our own trees, and we're doing work with chestnuts and hazelnuts and thinking about the long-term, where do we want this whole system to go? And so here's some of the beings that I want to go there with, because whenever I perceive anybody that comes to the farm, young or old, what they are engaged with is the life. And what the life that's most similar to us is the other animals. And that we, Rudolf Steiner said that the domesticated animals, we didn't domesticate them, they offered themselves up in service to humanity. And I think that's a really interesting perspective when we think about really putting our life force behind their well-being. by making realities that thrive for them. But goats are one of those ones that continually challenge our creativity. And also enthrall us with their love. So that's, and also provide a source for recycling the byproducts of our breeding programs with growing seeds. They get a pretty, and we've been working a bit with pigs. These are American guinea hogs, heritage breeds. And that's, as I think about doing work with seeds, I think from my perspective, one of the most salient responses we can have to climate change, considering we all eat every day, is to be doing conscious plant breeding and selection for adaptation to stress and being able to perform in low input systems. We can also be doing this with animals, consciously breeding them to co-evolve with these polycultures. And also, I really think we need to be doing more work with nursery stock and actual sexual reproduction with trees and shrubs, and not always relying on grafting and clonal mechanisms, so that we allow for a feedback loop with our climate. And that's, I think, a really important thing, and it's staggering to me, the level of opportunity. So we do a lot of collaborative things in our area. This is some beehives that a neighboring biodynamic apiary leaves at our farm. And in our neck of the woods, you have to have fencing to keep the bears out. And we have black bears, other critters that we love. Okay. And these critters, they begin to come in other forms. And they really help define the nature of our farm systems. And so when I see in my kids, we work a lot with young people on our farm, and really holding the door open to a lively future by allowing them to share in our experience of our kind of head scratching of like, well, I don't know, let's try this. So, through plant breeding, through doing the homesteading work, through production agriculture. We have a cooperative CSA that I helped start 13 years ago called the Siskiyou Sustainable Cooperative, and now we deliver food to 300 families every week with a group of about 10 farms and ranches, and we also distribute produce through our food stamp, the Oregon Trail program, and also to the senior centers and the hospitals in addition to our CSA. So that's a really cool model, and I don't even really do much of that anymore because I'm mostly doing seed. It's other people that took that business model and ran with it. And oftentimes our president of the board of our cooperative CSA is a former intern of mine, and that's when I'm like, that's when you're really rocking it. And we work with biodynamics, and that's always been an important thing for us, but it's not a flag we fly. It's something we just put into what we do and broadcast that level of intention towards integrity out into the world. And I think that's one of the reasons we work with seeds. Because if we were to grow, let's say this is an onion seed crop, onions, we can only feed so many people. Onion seeds, it magnifies that much more. And then here's my good friend John Navazio in the field, and we're magnifying even that much more because we're teaching others how to grow seeds. And and then we gain information from having their feedback on the farm, getting to learn from it. Just a little note about natural farming in Fukuoka. I've been really fascinated with designing long-term rotations. We do an 8-year rotation with oats, red clover, in which we get straw and grazing material, and that's the sheep there next to seed crops, and then we get hay out of that. We put up a portion of our own hay. And then we go back into vegetables, and we also work with a lot of woodland forestry crops. This is with willow. And thinking of nursery propagation and all the other products, we include the ocean and harvesting seaweed for nutrition and fertility. We include fire as one of our most primordial tools, and really looking to our oak woodlands. I think this is the most important crop on our farm, and yet we have no idea how to use it. So we're learning. And looking to the forest and then the natural ecosystems, not only for shelter. Here's a greenhouse we built, but also the diversity of nature, and just constantly noticing all those mutations. Here's a 100-headed sunflower, and I want to tip my hat off to Mushroom Alan Capular, who I'm fortunate enough to work with a lot of his genetics, and really get that, and tip my hat off to the indigenous agriculture of our ancestors. This is Apache red corn, and we work on improving and also distributing seeds, much like Native Seed Search, to people that can grow food and gain worth through sustenance. And then breeding new material just for the heck of it. We're working on, this is chinmark, the starburst pattern. I noticed some sweet corn type kernels out of that. So at some point, 5 to 10 years from now, we'll have a starburst kerneled sweet corn. Is it like really a great gift to humanity? I don't know, but it's fun and we learn through it. And then this is where I'm like, we got to keep it fun and engaging, because this is, this is important. This is us. We were all children. And if we lose that, okay. And so this is part of the Seed Academy. I started doing this training at our farm, an academy coming from Athena, the temple of the Greeks, of our commitment to knowledge and the advancement of knowledge. So the Seed Academy people come to our farm for 5 days and learn about seed, learn how to do all this stuff. And so we have a seed company as well. And this gives us a voice out there in the world, and also an opportunity to support other growers. So you come to the Seed Academy and we can give you seed contracts. So these are some new seed packets that we put out, and we distribute seed online. This is our latest seed catalog. And it also diversifies the job set on the farm to include marketing, distribution, all the business side, graphic arts, and really I think opens up the potential for my kids and other people's kids to have meaningful employment engaged in agriculture that's not always in the field, because then we can honor multiple skill diversity over time. And again, working with cooperatives, I helped start the Family Farmer Seed Cooperative, so just really seeing this bioregional hub model, I want to see this expand so that we have true seed stewardship over time. And again, sharing on the farm has been really important to us. This is from the Seed Academy. Our next one's in April. And having fun, we do a bit of natural building and all that fun permaculture stuff. So this is building a bathhouse that will integrate into our greenhouse system. CSA pack out, farmers markets. And then I just want to bring it around to like, all this is ultimately about food and people. Like all this work we're doing, it's not for some abstract thing. We're growing food for people. And then when I look at the farmers market, like who's eating? Who's deciding who eats, what we eat? And what I see is the moms and the kids. Okay. So and I just wanted to close with this. The ultimate goal of farming is not the growing of crops. It's the cultivation and perfection of human beings. So thank you.
Don Tipping. Thank you, Don. Good job. Inspiring. Yay. That's why we do this, huh? Was that inspiring? Yeah, cool. So next we have a featured farmer from West Marin, near the ocean in California. Guido Frosini is working on a 4th generation family farm, and he describes himself as a grass farmer. And he's going to explain how that interacts in his life. He raises free-range animals and markets them, and is developing his farm into a long-term sustainable system. We thought it would be interesting to get a young man involved here to discuss the process of becoming a farmer, as well as what he's learning and this whole process. And is also becoming quite well known for his product and his marketing techniques. So with no further time, I'm going to ask you to welcome Guido Frosini. Thanks, Guido. You know how that thing works?
Yeah, front back.
Got it? And you're seeing good. Oh, you're up
Yeah.
over the microphone, and you're seeing what's up there.
Well, good morning to all. I just wanted to start with a remembrance. One of our neighbors this week passed away, Craig Ramini, one of the few water buffalo dairies in our area. So for a moment, this goes out to Craig. Well, I was born in Italy from my Italian father and an American mother, and I used to travel. Most of my family lives here in California. So I used to travel here every summer and visit, and that's how I really slowly got fascinated into food. I was raised in the culture of food, and for me it was very important. When I first came here for college at the age of 19, I studied in San Francisco with the Jesuits for 2 years. I was studying general theology and political theory. Always been fascinated by power dynamics and how that functions. I realized that there was a pretty huge disconnect with the food that we ate. I got very involved with political activism, and I was organizing with the RCP. It was during the period where we were in Iraq, and went to DC. We wanted to topple the Bush regime. And I was part of the team to cook for everybody. And I was dumpster diving one night. And I realized that I was dumpster diving for top ramen. And I was yelling at people. And I didn't know where all this energy was coming from, but definitely like I was not happy. I couldn't find a place, a sense of place. So that is where, because of even the lack of cohesiveness that I saw in our leadership, that it felt that it was like an empty action. So quoting Brock Dolman, he was speaking yesterday about degenerative disturbance. I chose to follow a path that was more conducive to what I wanted to learn, is growing food. If I was able to grow food, I could potentially boycott people I didn't want to feed in a very simple of ways, or just really understand how I could make a living for myself, because I didn't know where that came from, and yet I eat 3 times a day. So I chose the path of regenerative disturbance, and that's something I learned years later. I've been farming now for 5 years. Where do I farm? Well, my great aunt, Ione Conlon, that's my great aunt, she never had kids. So I was the only nephew that was interested. And I contacted her after 2 years of college and asked her if I could come help out on the farm. And that's where really my farming experience started. I had never approached an animal before. I just was accustomed to always have good food around. With that, it was an eye-opener. We were a commercial cow-calf operation. We managed around 1,400 acres in northwestern Marin County, an hour and a half north of San Francisco. And what I discovered is that still there was a disconnect there. We didn't even eat our own beef. And the more ranchers I met, they weren't eating their own beef. If they did, it was the cow that had a broken leg or something that really wasn't as good as what we can be producing. So after being there for 2 years and learning about life cycles, and I saw my first birth, really widened my sense of awareness of what was possible. The fact that I wasn't the only species on the planet. The fact that there were other things around me that do coexist with me, and that my actions actually influence that. I started thinking we should raise our animals all the way to finish. So we started with beef, and we started with a breed. My aunt's always been fascinated with Japanese cattle. So we started with Wagyu. This is Guido Jr., one of our best bulls. So Wagyu is a Japanese breed. We try to create a niche market in San Francisco. Nobody really raised this. It's a national treasure now in Japan. You can't really find genetics. So we started just with 20 animals, and now we cross our bulls with Angus mothers, the finished steers and heifers at 26 months of age. We market directly to the consumer in San Francisco, the Bay Area at large. And so far, we have had good response. That was started 3 years ago. And we started really just by doing a bull first. Then it was a few steers. And then it was learning about the types of grasses and the different flavors that come into the meat, depending how you manage. And then I started learning about grasses. Nobody had told me about the different types of grasses. So going back, I mean, there's 20 different varietals of grasses right here. They haven't gone to seed. This is great gaining grass right now. We're 2 miles from the coast, so it's coastal rangeland. We have some shrub, sandy, clay soils. So we learned about the life cycles, when the best time, to finish animals, and also offering different types of beef. There's spring beef, there's summer beef, there's winter beef, the different types of relationships that the beef have with the grasses. So the educational component became quite huge. While we were learning, we were trying to teach others. And a way to build a brand is also gap that disconnect by educating. So we brought as many people as we could on the farm. And this was thanks to young people like Evan that was with me at the ranch, many others that I know in this room, Nick. They came, they lived with me, and we were learning together. As we progress, we start diversifying because you start looking for nature. You can't just raise one animal. So we learned, so we started doing pigs at one point. We did chickens. We tried rabbits. We raised lambs. At the moment, we focus on beef and pork. Pork has become huge because, again, with diversity, there's resiliency. So in the drought, pigs do okay. So it's a matter of the constant ability of being flexible is really what creates resiliency. So that is what we've learned so far to this day. And it's been, like I said, 5 years. After opening our ranch up, because many times I was driving around and all I could see is no trespassing signs. So how can we learn? How can we buy food if I just want to go up? In Italy, I was used to just driving around, and you go to somebody's house and they offer food, different types of agritourism. It's been around forever. The idea of the sacredness of hospitality. So we try to take that as a basic rule to try to share what we are learning and also the mistakes that we've been doing. I think it's really important to share the mistakes and to share as much knowledge as we can. Kitaguni again, Alexander. These are our finishing animals. What we realized learning about grasses is that there's rest periods, there's annuals, there's perennials. And so this is what the ranch looked like. We were running around 350 mother cows. But then after 3 years with different types of fencing, rotational, low-stress livestock handling, this is what that same ravine looks like. And this is the water that flows through it. And so we realized that maybe beef wasn't really what we were raising, but we actually had this gift, these animals that could actually restore an ecosystem that we didn't know possible. Maybe food consumption and beef was only a byproduct. Then that got exciting, all the way to the point where now it's the year of the soil for the UN, and now we're talking about carbon sequestration. And so if we can start looking at our food system completely differently, and as farmers, as really just stewards of carbon and potentially of feeding not just ourselves, but all other species and the soil first and foremost, we could probably feed and utilize also the spaces that we're not utilizing because they're mismanaged. It's impressive to think what we can actually start producing when we get back to certain organic matter levels in the soil. So with low-stress livestock handling, we realize that we can really move animals anywhere we want. There's the idea you can place them, not even using fencing, but that's an art. It becomes stockmanship. But having a relationship with what we raise, a very direct relationship. We're very small, and one thing that really was fascinating is when we were asking our customers if they wanted to know exactly what animal they were eating, they could, because we could just put it on the website. And over 70% said no. I don't know how to gap that. We're not talking about blood. It's just a matter of like seeing a face. I mean, they have names. So to gap that, instead of doing the farmers markets, we start doing this idea of a cow share where people actually buy beef when it's seasonal. And so we can sell it. Again, that idea of flexibility, sell all your animals when they're ready, have other people store them for you, and then they can eat it throughout the year. Have a community freezer and share it that way. So that helped out a lot. With this idea, 2 years ago, after a very hard year, we started receiving some phone calls, and Playboy, we were in the November issue of Playboy, of 14 things to do before you die was eat our beef. So that was one of them, and then slowly get in newspapers. So you never know what's out there and who's listening, so always speak your mind, be passionate. Like, don't worry what people think. Like, you have to believe in what you're doing because not always will you have somebody just certifying you saying, yes, you're on the good path. We don't know what we're doing most of the time. So it's good to experiment. It's good to pay attention. So here, you can see Evan with a cowboy hat in the back. But that's what we're doing. We're really trying to bring people and sit down and have them eat food. A lot of times we like to serve raw beef because it's possible, it's delicious. So you can really taste the flavors. So we've had over 2,000 people come to the ranch at this point. And again, we've only been open for three years. And this brings me to the next point. This is soil that's been managed with cows at high density, and that's soil that's been exposed. The difference in temperatures, this was taken in August. This was 82 Fahrenheit, and that was 97. So that blows away, that doesn't in the wind. So it's again, the regenerative process, the regenerative disturbance that we can have with ungulates, and therefore also food for us, is incredible. So there's a lot more research on that, and I'll have a few resources that I'll share with you at the end. But I'm going to read from here just a little bit, just a few points that I've experienced in the last 5 years of my life. And if they can help at all, I hope it does. I've been working on the land, for the land, and with the land for 5 years. I have had no formal training on how to approach land. I learned about observation, patience, practice, and disposition. I started learning how to trust my intuition, something that I was never taught in school. I became fascinated by the resiliency of the ecosystem that I work with and I lived in. I started paying attention, actually paying attention to my surroundings. I realized that it takes a lot of patience, and I'm just grasping the idea of patience and what that means. What you saw before in that creek, that took 3 years. In this day and age, like using two types of like laptop and phone, like the time that we have in our mind, the way we interact in society is completely different than how nature interacts. So this regenerative disturbance, how we can really come to this, it's really like calming down and just accepting that it's a different type of time that we're in when we're trying to regenerate something. We can destroy topsoil within a storm, but it takes years to build it back. So we have to think in the future, have some forethought. Also, farming takes dedication and perseverance. It's paramount. But when you stay in one place long enough, sometimes all you have to do is sit and listen, and you'll learn a lot more than just running around constantly. For those answers, the ones deepest in our heart, we also need inspirational landscapes that can nourish us. Unfortunately, many agricultural landscapes have become a sort of warped mirror, a desert for the soul. They still feed our stomachs, but food production cannot be limited just for calories for human consumption. Agriculture production zones, in my mind, are biorhythmic life echoes. As farmers, like we manage and steward how long this echoes last for others to hear in the future. The concept of proprietary business information in agriculture is counterintuitive and counterproductive. And I'm not talking in a business sense, but just in a technical, in a method, in models that need to be shared moving forward. Because otherwise, how can we learn? There is a generational gap. We need to share more information. We are not in competition. This is not a race. We need to share what we're learning. And we need to learn that more and more are sharing. We're trying to reestablish a mutual beneficial relationship with our food system. We need to share that generation from generation. We never have to be ashamed of naming our mistakes. We are not here to profit from the abuse of soil. Most of us eat us 3 times a day. Most of us do that every day. So what are you eating while you're trying to solve your world's problems? And do you eat what you produce? Can you eat what you produce? So as producers and consumers, as citizens of this planet, I think we have to put into action our ideas, establish a connection, finding that connection, and sharing it with others immediately. We need to empower, through education, the consumer base. We need to really have a better inquisitive authority. Less laws protecting consumers and more information empowering them. The concept also right now of the idea of support that we have, I think is a pretty empty word. It's an agreement to a trendy idea of like buy local or it's something that's green. It's a romanticized view of a mismanaged pastoral viewshed. We drive around and just for the weekend, just to enjoy the landscape. It's not just a landscape. This is a food production zone. Food production and wilderness can coexist and become symbiotic. We can manage ecosystems and food production zones that self-renew. Where input becomes minimal, maintenance necessary but pleasant, and where diversity reigns abundant. There is a great need to change towards a different set of values. All it would take is a slight change of perspective. And I think we're starting to grasp that. We're looking at a greater scale at, excuse me, that's what happens when you read. all it would take is a slight change of perspective. We are starting to grasp that on a broader scale of the importance of soil carbon as a staple for agriculture. And we're looking at a future where we're not asking anymore, how are we going to feed a growing population, but how are we going to feed and create more soil that can feed then, in turn, everything else. The value all along has been in the soil. Mining it and selling it has brought us to where we are today. Let us rethink this together, and as my friend Papadopoulos says, let's start dancing with systems. So on that note, that concludes what I'm going to say today. But on that note, I wanted to mention the greatness of food, the sacredness of hospitality, the ability for us to create spaces to share our ideas, and also how to get involved. So we have the Marine Carbon Project, which I've mentioned, located in Marin County, but they're doing research with the NRCS right now. There's cost share programs available for ranchers, even farmers, about restoration of riparian areas and whatnot, reforestation, grazing practices. So it's out there. Slowly we are going to subsidize, and the federal government is coming on this to subsidize correct practices, which we need. Because it hasn't been easy transition from a cow-calf operation like that to actually managing for the ecosystem. It takes time, and the financial burden is tremendous. So we do need help in that transition. Otherwise, very few of us will do that. I was fortunate enough to have the ability to do this, but not everybody's in the same situation, and it's not easy. Dirt credit. That's a new website that just came up. My friend Nick Papadopoulos is creating it. The idea of dirt credit is where we certify businesses, as farmers and ranchers, we certify businesses, we certify restaurants. And it's no third-party verifier, but we actually say who is actually supporting us. They can't buy from us once and then keep us on the menu. And so that's one way of empowering and changing kind of that value system. Ways to get involved, if somebody's interested in the grazing, there is holistic ag. Right now that's being grazed in close to Calistoga, Pepperwood Preserve. There's a lot of research also from ecologists happening at the same time. So holistic ag is one. The other one is the Holistic Institute, Alan Savory. There is Grazing for Change happening at the end of February in Chico. Then there is the Sonoma Mountain Institute. They are also managing landscapes. So there's talk with private landowners, but also with state parks. And to start utilizing spaces that we never have. Open space is a lie. These grasses have evolved with these herbivores. We need that disturbance. And with that, I just welcome everybody to get as much involved as you can, and don't be scared of making mistakes. I had lunch with Ellen Strauss yesterday, and she asked me 3 questions, because we started talking. I was like, I'm speaking tomorrow. I'm talking about success. What should I say? And she asked me, well, do you enjoy what you're doing? I was like, I do. I do. Most of the time I do. Do you see your future as like straight and abundant? I was like, maybe not straight, but it's definitely been really abundant. And then she asked me, are you meeting the right people? And we looked at each other and we smiled. So with those 3, as long as you're the change you want to see, that's it. So, to you.
Guido. Thank you. Guido Frosini. Thanks. That was inspirational. All right. So, I'm honored to introduce our last speaker, our last farms. And this is a multi-generational project, and I think it's very special and unique. It's 3 generations, Joe, Doug, and Anthony Perry. And Joe will not be joining us today. He had a heart attack last Saturday, but he's on the mend, and I fully expect he will be here next year, as he has been here for many years. He's actually one of the longer time elder members of our community who comes virtually every year. What's really interesting about this, the Perry family farm in an area that was once extremely populated by farmers on the bay, literally the mud flats of the south part of San Francisco Bay, which was is a beautiful place to grow crops, amazing climate, amazing soils, and also became extremely populated by human beings to where the point they are the last of that group that farmed for 100 or more years in that community. They represent the very last of the row crop growers in their community, in that location. And they farm in a unique relationship with a park that they'll explain. So we have Joe who's at home, and we're actually going to pass around a get well card here later today. And you can sign it and wish him his well-being. He had an angioplasty this week, and as Doug said, he's a tough old bird. He's going to kick this one. He'll be back, and make sure you meet Joe. He's a living treasure. He actually, just one second, Doug, I'll get you over. Joe actually was the first person when he started doing the wise words from well-seasoned farmers, which we'll be doing it again tomorrow. Joe was one of the first three and had an amazing recollection, and Doug helped him as well, recalling back in the 40s and such of what farming was like on the mudflats of the San Francisco Bay. So we have Joe's son, Doug, and Joe's nephew, Anthony, who's joined the farm in the recent past and is going to continue the tradition of the Perry family farms. So please welcome first Doug and then Anthony Perry.
All right. Thank you, amigo. Thank you very much. Yeah, Dad, he's doing pretty good. Yeah, he just, he was pretty worried. You know, we were all worried about him. And he's doing a lot better. I'm Doug Perry, and I manage, and this is my nephew, Anthony. It's his grandson. And so we grow in a very unique area. We're, you know, in an urban environment. We're surrounded by 2 freeways and a shopping center, and we're kind of the last of it where we're at. But we started not too far away from where we are right now. I don't know if you're familiar with Fremont, right between Oakland and San Jose. And an area called Beard Road on North Fremont, and a lot of it was just immigrants. You know, our Portuguese and Italian community, and they were all vegetable growers. And my father, basically, he took over when he was 13 years old. His farm, because his father passed away really early, and he took it way beyond. He grew up going through Castro Valley area. He was an organic farmer. That's all there was back then. He did a lot of gathering between their chicken manure and their cow stuff. It was on 4.5 acres, and he did quite a bit of growing vegetables. Mostly he started with rhubarb, which I didn't know that until about a year ago. I said, rhubarb? I said, you really, Dad? It's like, because we are on about 91 acres in East Bay Regional Park at Ardenwood. And we're growing lettuce, broccoli, cauliflower, a little bit of everything, tomatoes, quite a bit. And he started then and eventually purchased some property up the street. So we had about 12 acres, and basically our whole farm was just, we were the only ones there, and we kind of got ran out. And he decided, well, does he move to the Salinas Valley or the San Joaquin Valley and farm? He wanted to stay in the area. And so we had been farming other properties right across the street from where we're at right now, which is all developed. And Ardenwood is a historical farm, with 91 acres, and they had asked my father, hey, can you farm this? Would you farm it for us? And at first, we were farming on another part in Newark, right next door, and he said, hey, I kind of don't like, farming under somebody. It's very hard when you're used to farming on your own, by yourself. And they said, hey, don't worry about it. We can work it out. And we coexist really well with the park. And you've got, there's always little buggy boos, but we always work through them. You can work with others in an environment like that and make it work. And we make it work, and it works really well for us. We're very diversified. We grow a lot of crops, so we're able to, my his big motto is, you're not sustainable if you're out of business. So, you better pay attention. And so it's quite challenging. Growing up as a kid on the farm, I mean, Dad's an intense guy. And it was we had good days and bad. He's one of the first farmers to have a tomato harvester in California, and that really got him going. To be able, and a couple of years later, he could have bought one twice as nice for a lot less, and he harvested a lot of tomatoes in the area, and it allowed him to stay. And this is where we, it's really nice, and where we're farming is beautiful. There's one gentleman that's in the Farm Bureau with, Dad and I, and he's a longtime Bay Area native. His family goes way back. My dad's just the first generation here who settled in the 20s. And Bernie Leal told me a story at one of our mixers. He said, I believe it was his grandfather, and he's like my dad's age at 83. And he was saying that, this is the East Bay along the coast from Oakland all the way to Santa Clara. He was saying they'd harvest, there was all grain all the way from Oakland all the way to San Jose. And, they would be harvesting with these, these big combines, steam. And you've got a picture that it was really quiet back then. There was, there were no planes, no cars or anything. And there was just wheat field after wheat field all the way down the coast. And he said they would start in Oakland blowing the steam whistle, and it would keep blowing about, I think it was 2 o'clock, he said. And his, this story was told to him. And he said they'd blow, and they'd go to each city all the way down till they hit Santa Clara, and all you would hear was this, one big long buzz. If you could imagine, what it would be like, nowadays, with all the noise and the planes and the cars, it's just incomprehensible. And it wasn't very long ago. It was a very short time in our history that this went on. And we developed our valley, along on both sides of the bay, and our hills are nice. They're beautiful. We got happy cows, but all of our, we've got a, Silicon Valley on one side, and everything else, and so we're still there. We're a little gem that we're still able to farm, and I'm not belly aching about it because that's just the way it goes. It's a progression of things. It's too bad because that ground was so fertile, but I think everything has a cycle, and I think someday it'll probably go back. Not in my time, but. We're very fortunate to be farming there. And why we're actually still in business, I came in late. I started early. I worked as a kid. My father he was an FFA kid, and he started in the Farm Bureau. He's a past president of the Farm Bureau like I am. And he started early on, he still fits in his FFA jacket. And he's 83. And I like to tease him, because I said, yeah, Dad, I'm an FFA kid too, and he said, well, what do you mean you were never in the, I said, yeah, I was forced to farm against my will. It's like, I didn't have a choice in it, So, and it's, he was a tough taskmaster, and I really had some good times. I took care of all our cucumber operation from the time I was really young, and I had a lot of responsibility doing that. And though I went into something else for 28 years, my mom got really sick. And, it really takes two. She was the one behind the scenes that did all the, she raised us kids, 4 of us. And she did the bookkeeping for the farm. So, he would come home, he'd eat, and he'd go to bed, and she'd still be up really late. And there was never, she's behind the scenes. And I know there's a lot of people out here who've had similar situations. And so our other spouses have to be recognized as, the hard work that they've put in, even though they're not in front. They're very, I just can't say enough about my mother. She's done a lot. And so that's how that worked out, and I got a little sidetracked. Yeah, they were married really early, and my mother did the accounting. My dad, everything when he grew up was on a handshake. That's how you did business back then. We're very simple people. I came into this thing after I had an injury, and my mom got really sick. She was, I've been doing payroll and a little bit of accounting for the farm and working at my other job. And my dad and my brother approached me and said, hey, Mom's not doing too well. Do you think you could, and you're not thrilled I'd been retrained doing something else. Would you mind doing this? And I, kind of helping us out. Yeah, sure. I thought, well, okay, I converted everything to computer, and I was working at it, and I'm thinking, oh man, how am I going to get out of this one? I said, it's like a lot of hours, and I hadn't had any surgery. My foot was really bad, and I had been waiting, and I'd come to love it. This is what I did as a kid, and it became really special. The hours are tremendous. We work crazy long hours, and I'm trying to be a better time manager. I'm trying to. It's not easy, and sometimes I know we all do this. You'll have a day where you'll go in and you'll try to be. They're really productive days. Everything is going good. Then there are other days that, gee, why in the hell did I come in? I could have just stayed home. And it's just the way, it's been for me. Okay. My dad, like I said, we started out, he had a good year in tomatoes. And so that really helped us out. It kind of took the ease off. We still farm with old tractors, all of our, Farmal H. We've got a couple of H's and A's, and we've got John Deere's, and we've got a few modern ones. But we're mostly very, Planet Juniors. We plant 2 rows, on 40-inch beds. And, we keep it pretty simple, but we are diligent, as watching our fields. What's really helped our farm over the years make it is we've been surrounded by really good workers. Our guys that work for us are, they're committed, and they've just, they're the best. We've also had several people that work other places on the side, and they love the farm, and they're able to tear apart a cat, to do the things that we can't do, and at a very low to no cost. That's helped us, helped my dad over the years get through. Somebody could take apart a tractor and put it back together. And my dad's a machinist, and he's very good. We're like junkyard wars at our place. Anthony's the torch. He's really good with the torch and the welder, and we're just, it's been like this forever. We make a lot of our own implements, and that's how we're able to stay in business. And like I said, he always, one of his other mottos beside "you're not sustainable if you're not in business" is plant, plant, plant. You've got to stay with it, and you've got to plant. The pace can be staggering sometimes, and the planting of our fields, and this is, a lot of this is not, it doesn't come, farming does not come natural to me. This is something that my father did as a kid. He grew up, it's in his blood, he did it. This is something that did not come natural to me. And every time I drive over that freeway and I look down on our farm and I see what we're doing, I'm so proud, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. And I'm just a part. And many of our workers have been with us for anywhere from 6 to 35 years, and they are farmers. They're phenomenal. And they worried when my dad started getting up there in age, like, hey, what's going to happen here? And I felt I have a deep responsibility and a commitment to them to keep things going. And in the process, I fell in love with it. So I'll leave it at that, and Anthony, my nephew Anthony, I'll take over here. Thank you, folks.
All right. I'm good. Is there audio for the video? All right, I want to show you guys a quick little video of our farm now, based as where it was, 60 years ago, from 4 acres?
Yeah.
So here's a little, sorry, I'm a little sick. Here's a
I
little
wanna
video.
feel the sun.
This is our drive in to work every morning.
I wanna see my friends, the old and new. We'll turn on the game and share some laughs, and we'll play this and that. Now say goodbye to rainy days, to the colder nights and the empty trees. Now for life in colors new, and it's all here for you. Cloudless skies, summer days, feels just like it's somewhere. Kids are out, safe to play, and it feels just like a beautiful day. Cloudless skies, summer days, feels just like it's somewhere. Kids are out, safe to say, and it feels just like a beautiful day. A beautiful day. Beautiful day. La da 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 da. Feel the grass between my toes. I wanna hear the birds, 'cause they come and go. I'd love to fly if I had wings, and I'd bring you with me. I wanna hit the beach, the ocean air, and we'll let the sand get everywhere. We'll watch the sun as it melts away, and smile just the same. With you, cloudless skies, summer days, feels just like it's somewhere. Kids are out, safe to play, and it feels just like a beautiful day. Cloudless skies, summer days, feels just like it's somewhere. Kids are out, safe to say, but it feels just like a beautiful day.
So that's just a little bit of what our farm looks like now today. And it's truly an honor to come to work every morning. Like my uncle said, my grandpa, he's put in countless hours of hard work and dedication to get it to where it's at now today. And it's an honor to carry on the legacy he's left behind. And that's one of the things that drive me personally every day. And I know I'm young and I don't have years and years and years and countless hours of experience, but I am pretty blessed to inherit that passion and resolve that my grandpa and my uncle and the rest of my family and cousins and uncles who's gone before us and who've treaded, and I'm pretty sure most of my family can say they're all FFA members like my uncle. They've all had to carry on through the rough punishment and tortures of daily excruciating labor-intensive hours. But it's truly an honor, and I got a couple of slides here, so let me see if I can find it. Kind of skip through these a little bit. Sorry. Here's my first slide. Growing up farmer. So, me personally, I had the honor to sit back and watch the generations before me. My brother and sister, my father, my uncle, my cousins, my grandpa. I've watched them interact with each other, living in a life as a farmer family. And I don't know if that's grammatically correct. My wife keeps correcting me on that, but I like the title, Growing Up Farmer. It holds a lot of weight to it. There's so many ups and downs, so many pros and cons. I mean, cons, we could sit here and all be depressed that we work millions of hours, we're stressed, our fingernails are bloody, but the bad thing about farming, the only bad thing I can think of is that you can waste time easily. It can be a waste of time. You can sit back and look at, I didn't get this much time to spend with my family. I didn't get this much time to spend with, my dad. I went through that. My dad would work crazy hours. He'd come home 8 o'clock at night, eat dinner, go back, turn on the water, come back, go to the market. 4 hours of sleep every day. And I'm growing up as a kid, like, where's my dad at? And I'm trying to learn this. Like, how can I change it? How can I make this better for my family and for my future? And the cons as well, the pros as well is, I can remember going to the farm and having a blast. And it's like, yeah, you lose a little bit of time, but you gain a lot of life. You gain a lot of substance, something that's meaningful, something that you've made yourself, something that you like my uncle said, you drive over freeway, you pass up hundreds of cars honking, yelling, hey, get out of the way. But then you pull up to the farm and it's like, wow. It's a beautiful experience. And so who pays the price? Like I said, it can devastate a family or it can unify a family. But change is good. And as growing up into this farm, and my grandpa's told me countless times how he's done things, I can't really get into it because it's kind of scary what he's done to make it, the hours he's put in. It's inhumane. The fingers he cut off and sew back on and go back to work. It's just
Literally.
It's crazy. So change is good. A few first aid kits on hand is always good to have. The good thing about New Age is we have a lot of greater technology, and I'd be kind of foolish not to use it to our advantage. So that's what we do nowadays is we really try to implement the New Age technologies we have and still use, the old ways of doing things because they're not bad, they're not wrong. It's just we can integrate it with a more efficient way. So that's what our goal is, to always use the new technology, new resources. Google's my best friend. I'm going on there all the time looking up, how do I do this? How do I do that? Because if I go to my grandpa, he'll tell me, but it'll be 2-3 hours of story time, before I can figure out the answer. I'm just like, you know what? Tell me after I need to get this fixed and I get this done right away. So those are the great pros. Cons, as you know, there's numerous regulations. My grandpa, just do it. I'm like, no, I have to finish this form. It has to be turned. Oh, do it next month. No, the government's not going to wait till next month for this form to be done. There's so much more regulations, so much media scrutiny. Someone gets sick off a head of lettuce and all of a sudden all lettuce is bad. The media can throw that out there in an instant. So those are the things that we kind of balance, and I'm sure most of you know that. This is kind of new to me, but what I've learned I've only been here, I forgot to tell you, I've only been here 4 years full time, but 24 years of just being experienced with it and hundreds of years of watching my family go through it and studying them. So what I've learned as a mentality of a farmer is that farming is far greater than just a job. It's not even a career. It's truly a lifestyle. It's something that's embedded in you. It's a work ethic that you're just enveloped in. It's everything you do from when you're cooking dinner and cleaning. It's like, man, why are you doing so much? It's like, I have to. I have this mentality that if I don't do it, no one will. Because growing up, if you rely on someone else to take care of it, chances are it might not get done. If you don't have the mentality that if I don't do it, if I don't make sure someone's doing it, if I don't have someone there doing it, the job won't get done. And I learned that from my grandpa, because when he would give you a job, he would do half the job for you to make sure it was done right. And then he'd, okay, go ahead and finish. And he'd come back 20 minutes later, and it's like, you could have done the whole job yourself. You know? I mean, but he did it because he wanted to make sure it was done right. And that's very important. Another one is,
That
my
and he's a
uncle said-
one-man, he's a one-man band.
He is. He's incredible. He's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So truly caring for those around you, we have incredible workers. And me coming into the business as a young hooligan, whatever they thought of me as, just stepping in, like, who are you? You know, how can you just step into management? We've been here for 25 and 30 years. So I was a little nervous that they would kind of be like, you know, we don't need you around. But I came in with the passion that I was here to better their lives. And they seen that right away, and they gave me there was no fighting, there was no, not listening to me. They came out to me, what do you want me to do? And I was just amazed that they would accept me that way. And I knew it's because the work ethic that I was inbred with, about never, ever giving up, never backing down, always pushing through, always having the resilience to get the job done. And they've seen that. I'm not here for a paycheck. I'm here to better this, this company, this environment, the experiences we have. So I'm kind of rushing through this. Oh, too fast. Oh, wait, back up. All right. Is the video playing? I don't know if I did it right. Here we go. This is what is success to me.
Ain't nothing better than watching you smile. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Ain't nothing better than watching you laugh out loud, my baby. Ain't nothing better than watching you be alone. Ain't nothing better than right now.
This is why.
In your eyes lie the secrets I don't wanna miss. Put your hand in my hand and make a fist. Grab my shirt, curl your lip as if you know. Staring back in my eyes, saying please don't go. I don't know what it is
It's a lot of hours,
that you really want. Oh, you leave. Hate every moment away from you. See you sleeping in my dreams. I know you're in another's room. I know that you're safe from harm.
My wife,
I know I'm coming home real soon.
This is what success
I'm
is.
bringing all my
It's not
love
about
for
having
you.
a popular
Ain't
name.
nothing
It's not
better
about
than
having
watching you
a big
smile.
house.
Whoa.
It's right here. It's having something I can go home to. My beautiful wife. Where you at? You want to stand up, babe?
Taking pictures.
That is success. That after working 100 hours, that she's involved with me, that I can bring her to conferences, beautiful conferences like this, and I can involve her in everything I do, because I don't want to make the same mistakes that I've seen before, that I don't want her to be separate from my work. I want us to be one unity, so that way we can always be together and we can always be successful. No matter what paycheck we're making, no matter what environment we're in, this is what success is for us. And
We all throw it back in the farm. It all goes back
everything goes back to
anyway.
the farm. It's
It all
just
goes
a,
back in.
a lump of fun. I think I only have a minute.
Does.
I only have a minute or two left, so I'm finishing up right here. And this is what drives us. It's a resolve. And the resolve I carry every day to get up is my wife. To make her happy, to make her smile, for our future kids. I can't wait to those, but it's that resolve that I carry in, that I know that this is doing something. When we have field trips, we have thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of kids who come to hear us speak the same speech over and over, how a farm is. And it's repetitive to us, but when we get off the ride and the kids run up and give us a hug, and they're just thankful, and they're writing us letters, that means so much to us that we can actually make a difference and influence. So it's that resolve that we really are doing something. And then it's the passion to carry through on the day. Because you need the resolve to get your butt out of bed, and you need the passion to drag it from the dirt and keep going. So as I close, we're really honored to be here, and I'm sad that my grandpa couldn't be here, but he's here with us in spirit, and he loves everybody here, and this conference and this whole entire organization is amazing. And I see everybody here unified.
You're all such a part of them.
Yeah, everybody here. Everybody who works together to strive. It shows that, this drive of making life better, to have a better future for our kids and our grandkids. It's alive and well. It's strong. Nothing's going to stop us. Nothing's going to get in our way, an obstacle is just a hindrance. It's just another thing we have to climb over, but it's not going to stop us. So we thank you guys. And
thank you all. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Great job. Thank you. Thank you. Say hi to your dad, please.
I sure will.
Doug and Anthony Perry. Well, that brings us to the close of this session, but I want to give one more shout out for those who brought us their enlightenment and the great diversity and the inspiring work that they do, to Don Tipping, Guido Frosini, Joe, Doug, and Anthony Perry. Please show your appreciation. Yay. And with that, we're on to more.